I think one of the things that we need to get a better understanding from the Department of Water and Power is what Hyperion is going to cost, the recycling, basically how they're going to, what the cost is for 195,000 acre foot. I've run some numbers using the DWP model, and it's going to be exceptionally expensive. I figured it's going to be about $20 billion over about 25 or 30 years extra over and above what we would be paying Metropolitan Water. We're having a little bit of a debate on some of the assumptions and methodologies, but from my perspective, you use a capital asset pricing model which does not assume debt. Sorry, guys. But I think it's going to be very expensive, and I think the department needs to come out and fess up what this thing is going to cost. I think even more so, we need to know what the fossil-free, the OTC once through cooling, and the goal to be fossil-free by 2045 is going to cost. And I think there's certainly the basis for a preliminary understanding, given that we had the 12 cases that was done by the consultant. I forget what the name of the consulting firm is, but that should give us a basis and a little bit of a ballpark. Several people inside DWP have told me that it's going to cost, basically, our rates are going to go up 2 or 3 times in real terms over the next 20 or 30 years. So that's going to be very, very expensive. So I mean, we're just not getting a whole lot of information on that. But so that's one. Hyperion and fossil free are 2 of my issues. A couple of other things. One is that in the last meeting of the commissioners, they were talking about leasing land to the city for $1 a year to be used for homeless facilities. And I'm not trying to be a hard ass or something like that, but maybe I am. But I don't think that's the Department of Water and Power's and the ratepayers' responsibility to do the homeless stuff. It's both the county and the city. And so I don't know what the fair market value of the rent would be, but I think we should be getting fair market values as opposed to $1. Another issue that's sort of come up that they've talked about are these EV chargers. And the mayor's plan had I think 27,000 chargers that they're going to be talking about, and I don't know what they cost per charger. I know $10,000-$20,000, so you're talking about $500 million, give or take. And is that is DWP in the power system in the transportation business? I would say no, and therefore they ought to be making money. They ought to be charging for the molecules, if you will. According to one person inside the Department of Water and Power who has real knowledge of this, basically the city's given away about $100 million of free power through these EV chargers. So that goes to the top 10% people who can afford Teslas. And they're not cheap cars. So that's another question that I'm sort of pondering, if you will.
Well, Jack, you have to admit that if DWP succeeds in stimulating demand, they'll have a lot more customers. They'll be selling a lot more electricity, and that's going to be good for their bottom line, won't it?
Depends on what they're getting paid for it. I don't think we're in the business of being the venture capitalists for the transportation industry. I don't think we should be supporting giving credits for used car payments. If that's a goal of the city, that should be a city expense, not a DWP expense.
But what if it actually generates demand?
Well, if it generates demand, that means we're going to have to build more facilities.
But we'll be selling more electricity. The first hit's free. That's a well-tested philosophy.
No. The first hit is not free. Not where we're paying for it.
Jack,
Yeah.
I suggest we bring back the DWP EV guy at one of the next couple meetings to address those issues.
That'd be great.
They have answers on all of that. Important thing to understand is DWP growth has been static for now 5 years or down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That means larger costs over the same number of kilowatt hours, which means rates go up at the rate those costs go up.
Right.
EV is seen in the power industry as the only way to grow demand. So it's a question of, like Dan said, how do you grow this? How much do you subsidize to stimulate demand, and when do you start charging full price for the power and or the chargers? And one of the higher one of the highest concentrations of EVs is in Oslo, where about 60% of the vehicles are electric at this point. Now, Norway has hydropower. They also have a lot of oil money, so they're doing pretty well.
They have $1 trillion trust fund.
Or so.
Yeah.
But they've discovered that they need perhaps 4 chargers per car to support the infrastructure.
4 chargers per car?
Yeah.
Wow.
One at home, one at the office, one at the stores, and some somewhere else.
Holy shit.
That's
You asked.
not per car, though. That can't be per car.
Yeah, I mean,
It needs access to that, but the number of.
well, whatever it is, there's gonna be all these charging stations, and the DWP should be making money off of them.
Absolutely.
It should not be a freebie. You know, if the city wants us to put those things out, the city should be paying for them. This is a political issue that they're talking about. It's not, you know, it's not a power issue.
You know, I don't think that LADWP is planning on giving the power from those chargers away for free forever.
Well, they've been, you know, according to the one inside source, which I would say that's impeccable, we've given $100 million worth of electrons away.
And we're already paying for the installation if you have an electric car, which is very expensive.
Yeah, so, well, but I like your idea, Fred, of, you know, getting them
Bring
in.
them in.
Let's get a regular report, because it's the one growth area for DWP.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is part of taking your whole laundry list of things. Let's put the water aside, and let's just deal with the power. Because this, to me, is directly related to the 100% renewable issue. The problem is, every time an issue like this comes up, they silo it, and they trot out the guy from the demand reduction, or whatever it is, you know, just to talk about that particular charger program. But the reality is, if this is a commercial business, and the city, we as taxpayers own a commercial business, and absent the guys downtown at City Hall and all the politicians, what we would say is, and we're civic spirited, we want to reduce greenhouse gases in the state, this is a state policy. But in order to do so, we've got to electrify transportation, and in order to electrify transportation, we have to have reasonably priced power. So, we don't go this 100% renewable road, which we know will triple costs ultimately, because it's outrageously expensive to go to that high percent. We say, we have some goal like 50, 60% renewable, and we say that's still a much better deal than tailpipe emissions. And so now we're going to stimulate electricity demand by putting these things around, and we'll have reasonably priced power, but we'll never electrify transportation unless the power is reasonably priced, and it can't be reasonably priced if it's anywhere near 100% renewable. We're not looking at this as a whole business and a whole greenhouse gas challenge. We're looking at this as individual targets with individual lobbies pushing for something like 100%.
Well, yeah, I think one of the things that we've seen with the, you know, for the recycling waste, garbage recycling is zero, whatever it is, the zero into the landfills is actually 90. Yeah, as opposed to being 100% diversion. 100% diversion is classified as 90% diversion, because the last 10% is just phenomenally expensive. And I think with DWP getting rid of the last 10% of greenhouse gases is going to be phenomenally expensive, and I think our money could be better used.
I
something
think
else.
everybody agrees.
Okay.
I think that the state's 100% energy goal is set as a goal, not as an aspirational goal for good reason. The hard targets are for lower percentages, like you're talking about.
The hard target for, you know, I mean, the hard
Talk
target
to
for
people at City
2035.
Hall. I mean, if you
Oh,
listen to
they
Eric
don't know
Garcetti, it
anything.
doesn't sound that way.
Yeah, well, they need
Sid?
they need to have an ambitious goal to get people to move. But if when it gets down to it, the last 20%, the last 10% are going to be hard and expensive, and none last, and that's okay.
Sid?
My misunderstanding is that the electric chargers, there's no charge for them when you use them?
I think I don't know.
So
I think, I haven't seen
don't
it.
understand why you wouldn't be collecting money right away.
Well, you know.
Well,
I don't get it.
All the private ones collect money.
The, what I heard Bill Thunderberg say is it cost a bunch to install them and charging initially didn't make any sense while it was a pilot project. I think
So why go to a business that doesn't make any sense? It makes no sense to me.
it's a pilot project to make sure
Why
they
should the
can do it.
government subsidize, underwrite these things? If it's such a good deal, why aren't private
You
businesses?
know, if the government can underwrite it, that's their business. I don't think the ratepayers should underwrite it.
Well, we got, right.
Tony?
Is this the MOU committee meeting or is this the political committee meeting?
This is the-
Okay.
This is the Pitchforks
If
Committee.
this is the Pitchforks committee, I forget, when does the Garcetti term out? 2021, some 22,
22.
something like
It's
that?
turned out in a year, no?
22?
No,
22?
no, they got the extra year when we did the change.
Oh,
Okay, so the day after he's gone, okay, all of these 20-year plans that the mayor has to look for his next goddamn job, who cares? It's all gonna be determined by who the next mayor of the city of Los Angeles is. So before we get in too big a sweat, let's see what we pay between now and when he gets turned out before we rev up too much, because the politics.
Is this
may
coming
change
from
the
an
day
east
after.
area, east to LA progressive?
Yes, we
Yeah,
have.
I voted
we have
against
to-
DE too.
But you know, I think, you know, the mayor has his
Think
goals,
about it.
and, you know, people are, that, you know, that's the orders that, you know, that's what we're marching to those orders. And I think there's gonna be a lot of momentum built up. I think a lot of people in LA, you know, politically, I don't think Eric's all by himself. I mean, you know, people have voted into the, you know, I don't think this is gonna be, you know, at 2022, I don't think it's gonna end. But my issue is, you know, tell us what it's gonna cost, and then, you know, how's it gonna be reflected for DWP in our rates, or is it gonna come back to real estate taxes, or sales taxes, or whatever the hell it's gonna be?
Well, they're never gonna tell us. We have to get them to demand, they tell us.
Right.
I have to point out that solar and wind is cheaper. It could be that this is going to save us money. In the
I hope
long run.
so. I hope, but-
Do you have
Let's-
solar panels?
Let's add some results of some recent studies. One, I think the most definitive one, because it's the least likely to be biased, is the PUC's IRP process that looked at the role of new investments before 2030. And the answer was, we will need some fossil to balance the system, which fits with what Dan had to say. You're gonna need fossil to help things run.
Mhm.
Whether that's 50% but we're already running about 50%. We've run up to 74% lately. It'll be on an annual average 10%, 20%. We'll learn, and it depends upon the technological progress in storage, whatever storage you're talking about.
I mean, Dan, you know, I mean, Fred, you sent me something the other day that they're, down in Texas, they're doing solar at what, less than 3.5 cents?
And we're seeing bids for solar here that are less than that.
Yeah, that's out in the desert, so to speak. You still gotta bring it into the basin.
Yeah, bringing it in doesn't cost that much.
Yeah,
Especially if you've abandoned your coal resources.
right. So, you know, maybe, Dan, you may be right, you know, I mean, we'll see, but, you know, let's see what happens with our rates. I don't see our rates.
It's great for 8 to 12 hours a day.
Yeah. There was some pundit that told me the problem with renewables is night. Do you remember that comment? It was Fred.
Yes.
The other component is, yes, the private chargers charge plenty. I was looking at the B of A building in Pasadena, stared closely at the charger. You pay for parking, and it was also 60 cents a kilowatt hour for charging, which is 4 times DWP's retail rate,
Average rate.
average rate.
So most charging is going to be done at home where it's your own power and you don't get socked.
Well, you're gonna pay for it one way or the other,
Well,
but you're not gonna
not-
get paid.
not like that.
You're not gonna get paid a commercial rate of 60
And
cents.
it's a hell of a lot cheaper than $4.50 premium gas.
Yeah, mine was, yeah.
Down to
I
4.
got it. But don't worry, the governor's called a study for this. We'll figure it out. Leonard?
Was increases on the agenda, talking about what plans are for rate increases from DWP?
I think Fred, you could tell us a little
Yeah.
bit.
Well,
Do you want to get up and, you got a couple things you want to talk about? I just had to get some of that stuff off my mind. Plus, I like getting Dan excited.
Oh, by the way, there's another second recent study with 11 sponsors, but 4 of them have gas in their name, done by Ernie Moniz, the former Secretary of Energy and MIT physics professor, that looked at the long-term mix and the challenges of California achieving the SB 100 goals, which is not 100% renewables, it's 100% clean energy. And I assume the definition of 100% clean energy will be discussed from now until 2055 for a 2045 goal. Leonard, first to answer your question, as opposed to talk about this presentation, we deliver our review of DWP's proposed changes for the interim on Monday the 13th. And the questions posed in the ordinance to be addressed are costs and revenues, are finances aligned with the rate ordinance? And 2, there are base rate revenue targets already in the ordinance. Those, I forget the exact numbers, Camden will correct me. For example, on power, this last year, the base rate revenue was designated to increase 3.4%, and the base rate revenue was set to increase 5.1% in 19 and 20. And the question is, do we reduce those or increase those by 2%? So if the 3.4 could go to 5.4 or down to 1.4, and that's handled through accruals and a rate change January 1, 2020. And then for the following year, for 1920, could that number go up to 7.4 or down to 3.4? And that is handled in a base an accrual that appears in rates January 1, 2021. So that's the timing of how those will occur. The review process will be before the board. This is the first time rate issues have been delegated for base rates to the board. The council can 245 these changes. And then an assumption that's buried in this is, when are we going to have the next complete rate review? And on the results we've seen and performance we've seen for DWP, their forecasting was good for about 3 years. And I think from the first month of my job, I said the utility industry can't forecast very well beyond 3 years. And the finances we're looking at looks like their forecasting falls apart in about 3 years because there are just too many changes in the business and you can't keep up. So we have to do rate. It'd be best if we did full rate reviews either on a 2-year or a 4-year cycle. And 4 years is stretching it. So what's happening now? This review will be complete supposedly by July 1 and will be reflected in rates starting January 1, 2020. Have I gotten anything wrong, Camden?
You might mention what the department's proposing.
The department was proposing no change to those base rate targets, which are the 3.4 and the 5.1 increases in the base rates.
And how much of total rate is base rate?
On power, it's between 40 and 50%. On water, it's a smaller percentage. the dollar amount of the swing on water is about 20 million total swing.
Yeah.
+2 or -2. On power, it's bigger. It's
90?
90.
Ooh,
90 million.
90 million.
45
Over
million.
over $3 or $4 billion
Correct.
revenue base. Okay.
It's 45 a year.
Yeah, 45 a year, up or down.
When does our new rates went in on what, April of 16?
Correct.
Or, let's say, 16, and so it's a 4-year deal, or was it 5 years?
It was a 5-year deal. And I've never liked 5-year deals, just for the record. And if you want a really bad deal,
Talk to sanitation.
talk to sanitation. Their 10-year rate increase, they were all going to be,
They thought they were gonna be rich forever.
well, they're doing pretty well.
Well, it was 6.5 for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
And is that keeping up with costs? Or?
It's not my job to review the details of those rates, but they don't appear to have frowns on their faces.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Is that right? The spread is 10 years, not 5?
For sewage.
Sewer
it's
service
a
charges.
Sewer service charges, it was a 10-year rate increase that was done about 4 years ago, 5
It
years
was a
ago.
5-year.
Yeah.
No, it was a 10-year.
It was 10 years, and I think it was like 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, or 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, and for the last 7 years it was 6.5.
That's like 50 cents every HCA.
Yeah.
Boom.
That's why they can afford all these highfalutin outreach people and seminars and things like that, PR.
$750 million a year they're collecting. That's the last figure I heard.
I think that might be on.
I can't speak to facts accurately at all. Why don't we tell you a little bit about how rates look now for the median customer, the regular median customer with undiscounted rates, the low-income customer, and the lifeline customer. So this is we did this last year. This is just an update for 2018. 2017 is on our website as well. We updated that 27 numbers, or the 2017 numbers. Why are we exploring? We wanted to look at median customer usage and billing. Intentionally, that's not average. It's a concentrated focus on low-income zip codes, all based on the 2016 American Community Survey. There are insights by comparing undiscounted and discounted, and the information is from a database that's a live database. We did this on a calendar year basis so we compare across other utilities more easily. But the database is live and its cancel rebills are occurring. So if we went to try to pull the same data now, it would be a little bit different. Implications are the conservation targets and DWP investments and evaluation of low income and lifeline credits. For power bills, the regular customers, 1.2 million of them, the median kilowatt hour use is just a touch under 300 kilowatt hours a month. This is not bi-monthly, but per month. And the median bill is $50.56. The low-income customers citywide use slightly less power. The lifeline customers are the over 65 group, but it also includes people with medical allowances, so they may have equipment that's using more power. So the median power use for that group is a little bit higher, although their discounts are larger. So their charge is $23.51, or almost exactly half of the total all city 1.488 million. If we look at a low-income zip code, we looked for the lowest 10 zip codes in the city, I picked one at the lower end with enough customers, so we weren't ending up with small sample statistics. You see the similar pattern, but in the very poor zip codes, the usage is down from 300 to 218, and their median bill is 3666, and the lifeline they're using a very low 202, and their bill is about 10 bucks a month. So an additional twist that would make that lifeline bill look lower is the water low income charge gives apartment dwellers a discount on their power bill when they're in an apartment building that has master metered water. If you look at water bill citywide, the median water bill is 9.5 HCF, and that's about 63 bucks a month. If you look at Lifeline in the low end of usage, that's 8 HCF, and the charge is about 39 bucks a month. If you look at a low income zip code again, same zip code, the usage is 6.5 for both the regular and the Lifeline, and the bills are 40 bucks and 39 for the Lifeline. If we combine water and power bills, which is not technically statistically correct because your low water user is not necessarily, your median water user may be a different group than your median power user, but we're going to add them up anyway. If you look citywide, the total class bill is 107. Take out the low income, it's 114, and Lifeline is 62. If you go to the poorest neighborhoods, the total bill is 69, and with Lifeline, it's down to 40.
That's a lot of money coming in.
That's it. The usage seems low on the power side.
Yeah, they don't have much money to spend on.
Okay, that's all low income then. Okay, that's not the typical. Typical.
Yeah, the sample low-income zip code, that's a very poor area.
Okay.
So, I mean, out of the community survey, we picked out the 10 lowest zip codes.
Probably where I live.
No, it's all concentrated to the low, certain areas of South LA. Now, if you broke down to census blocks, you might end up with poor sub-areas, but the income data wasn't readily available. We couldn't match between DWP records and low-income census American Community Survey information, anything more conveniently than the zip code load. I'll back up. Wrong way. Notice with the low income group, the median bill is 30 bucks a month, but the standard deviation is 74. There's a lot of disparity in that group. And based on the kind of discussions we've had with customers, it bifurcates into two groups: people who are poor in assets and poor in income, or people who are had good assets but now they've aged, their retirement income is not high, they're low in income but have assets. So that group tends to have a bigger house that they're trying to maintain at the prior level, and they're in trouble with their usage.
DWP tells us the average use is 500 kilowatts per month. And, I thought that you sort of had a bipolar one where you had apartment buildings and then you had single-family residents.
This is all single-family metered.
Fred,
It can be,
show them the curve.
Yeah, but, I mean, if there's 1,000,005 meters out there.
This is median, and there's an important distinction on median. Just look here. The median is in this range, where 50% of the customers on this side and 50%. Since this tail of customers is long, the average, because it includes these high numbers, the average is higher than the median.
Well, they're saying the average.
So I can find the median customer. I can't find the average customer.
How do you factor in the houses that have solar power?
Did we weed them out? Yeah, we weeded the solar customers out of this group.
This is
Doesn't show solar.
So,
Yes.
My last bill, I looked at carefully, and I just slopped over into the second tier for electric charges, and I noticed a $12.50 second tier access charge. Could you explain that?
Maybe. That charge was put in to capture customers that have low usage but peak in their usage in some month. So that access charge is based on your average usage in the highest billing period during the year. And that was intended to set it up so that solar customers who don't use the system very much most of the year, but in some dark winter days or in very high air conditioning use during the summer, they're leaning on the distribution system buying load. It's intended to charge them, but it applies evenly to all customers. So if you have a month that has a jump in your electric use versus, or a 2-month period where it's a jump in electrical use, that will form the basis of that power access charge. In some ways, it's
for the whole year.
For the whole year, for a 12-month period.
It's a humane demand charge. Some utilities have a demand charge where they charge you for the most power used during the year, and it's not tiered. LADWP tiers it so that low-income customers don't get hit so much by the demand charges. It's a nice design.
And the typical for some areas, when they measure demand, they'll measure it, especially on commercial customers, they'll measure it on a 15-minute basis. So if somebody steps on the power for 15 minutes, they pay for it for a year. And I don't know any commercial customer who likes demand charges.
So it's reset on October 1, and it'll look back 12 months at the billing history. So the summer would be the time, if that's your typical high use, that you want to think about your marginal loads, because you have a chance to move from tier 2 access charge to tier 1 if you come through the summer with just a little bit less demand.
There's 3 for power and 4 for water. Right? Here.
Correct. And then, like,
Your averages for the low income, and you mentioned South LA, but
our median is for the low income.
the median, okay, so that includes the mix in the San Fernando Valley of low income residents
Right.
and
There
seniors
wasn't
hanging on?
there wasn't a zip code where that stood out. It's more of a mix. We'd have to go to census block,
Yeah,
and we'll let DWP do that.
we get a true picture of how many are on the low income.
You know, there's poverty everywhere in LA, but
Yes.
if you're looking to study how it affects power use, you want to focus on where it's concentrated.
Okay,
So there wasn't a zip code in San Fernando Valley with
It's a
a
mix.
concentrated zip code of poverty.
And we went looking for that.
We looked at every zip code.
Okay.
Good.
Where was that zip code?
South LA.
Yeah.
But all 10 of the zip codes are South LA.
What about the valley?
Well, that's what we just
Didn't,
asked.
didn't find them, that was not in the bottom 10.
Well, the zip codes are so mixed, like Panorama City, 91402. You have high-income people, and you have a whole bunch of people who look like, you know, double and triple in apartments, and it looks like Pico Union, and it's all in one zip code, so.
You got it in Reseda.
But what they found, the thing is, what they found in South Central is going to look like what my West Panorama City looks like with all those triple up low-income apartments.
What he said.
And?
Well, the and. Tony, you're going to get me to come to the conclusion. If you compare the low-income programs for the public utilities like LADWP, they're now constrained by Props 218 and 26. And the supposedly more egalitarian public utilities are, don't look as good as the investor-owned utilities with substantial low-income programs. Supposedly 30 to 40% of the customers on Edison receive very heavily discounted low-income rates. And if you look at Edison's average rate, it says, their recent reporting says 16 cents. But that's a lot of stuff that's a little bit lower than LA rates, and a lot of stuff that's way more, 60%, 60+% that's way more expensive.
Their tiering is much steeper too.
Yes.
I mean, real steep.
Real steep.
I mean, I think they get up to like 30 or 40 cents a kilowatt.
Correct.
Some of those areas. Okay.
It's easy to justify solar. Slam dunk.
Okay, that's about it. I guess a couple things. We want to get something on EV chargers. Do we have any other areas that we'd like to, sort of hit the department up for?
We'll send you a copy of our report when it comes out.
Why Monday? That's the board meets on Tuesday?
That's our 2 months from the time we received adequate information from DWP.
Okay. And then the board meets the next day or the following week?
Next day.
Okay. Second and fourth? Yeah.
There's no intention to vote on this at that meeting.
Right. So we got EV Sid?
You had raised a question about the total costs for all these, through cooling and all this, whether those numbers could be brought forward.
Okay.
We've done that once already on the ones through cooling.
But the other, the 50% or the 100% fossil free and.
Well, the National Renewable Energy Lab with the council sponsored 100%, we'll call it the SB 100 study. That's not expected to produce results until late this year or early next. And with some of the changes in the ones through cooling, there appears they're renegotiating that contract with NREL because it's put more on NREL's plate.
Don't roll embed the same consultant like
So we won't have it.
Well, but even, the thing is, even the department's study, the initial study that said, no, you can't do this, or you're not gonna be able to serve the system, gave the example of, I think it was the harbor. Yes, you can do it in harbor. Don't rebuild the harbor plant.
Other way around. The lowest carbon alternative was to rebuild the harbor plant.
Well, but what I'm
But
saying
don't
is,
rebuild
if you do not reinvest in a new gas plant in harbor, and instead go batteries, basically, and get the solar somewhere else, it will cost $1 billion more than putting in
Tony?
the new gas.
Tony, 4 to 5.
4 to 5?
5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think Lank is on board. I think it's,
Okay.
we're 7 minutes. We're 7 minutes over time, but that's usually, we're usually 15. So I guess we're ending on time. So EV rates, and both Hyperion as well as fossil free. Get some better feel for it.
You know, along with EV, you could add a little bit, ask about demand reduction, because when will they be doing an EV demand reduction pilot?
What, okay, I don't know, what does that mean?
It means smart EV charging when power is cheap.
Oh, okay, okay, time of use. By the way, I had an interesting one. I just put in a time of use meter. And the department told me that my bill will be the lower of my regular one or time of use. So I think, you know, we'll see what happens, but I thought, you know, maybe I'm a guinea pig and maybe some of you other
Did you
guys
pay
are
for
guinea
it?
pigs. Pardon?
Was it free or?
It was free, yeah, they came over and installed it. It didn't seem to be, you know, they just changed a couple of things in there. It was pretty, yeah, but it's digitized now. But, you know, that's just, you
I
know.
miss that spinning wheel.
Well, that's the, you know, so you could read them backwards, forwards and backwards, the way they had those wheels, you know, on the numbers. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. See you later.